Hello, welcome once again to a Daily Academy podcast. I'm Big Italy 42, here with the author of this great piece, Scott Mayerlich at Sports 25 to Life. And we're talking about projections and value, NFL podcast here, and how to utilize these things, what they are, everything in between. So why don't you give us your basic rundown here of projections, what they are and how to utilize them, and what your strategy is with them.
Yeah, this is just a pretty basic breakdown of how to use projections and how to turn that into finding value based on the players' prices on the sites. As far as projections go, there's a lot of projection sources out there, especially for NFL. There's a lot of good ones. You could get really in-depth and try and create your own projections, but as far as like having projections, we have great projections on Daily Fantasy Cafe. Lots of other sites have professionals spending 40, 60 hours a week also creating projections for NFL because it's a really popular part of the industry. And if you want to try and out-project people that spend the majority of their life during football season doing that, I mean, more power to you. But the way I like to approach it is to take the projections of people that really know what they're doing. You can find this kind of stuff by looking at Fantasy Pros, find out who's been the most accurate over a long period of time, find out what people are putting into their projections to see how you want to approach using them, because different sites project differently. Some of them weight matchups heavier, some of them weigh recent performance heavier, some of them weigh career performance heavier. And that's going to be a different way to approach different types of games, because people that are weighing the matchup really heavy, those are the type of projections that I like to use for like GPP style games, because they're really trying to predict big games and big variance in guys scoring based on the matchup they have that week, rather than really just trying to, I don't want to say not like over project people, but they're more conservative about it. And those are the type of projections that you want to use for cash games. And that's one of the things that if you can find somebody that's been really accurate, but doesn't take a lot of chances, that's the type of projection system you want to find for cash games. And then the people that do take chances are a great way to integrate exactly what you want for GPPs.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense. I mean, you see the really advanced models, they take into account, some of them do the Vegas odds and props and things of that nature. And like you said, that's more suited for GPPs, of course. But so the whole baseline, obviously, with the projections is, understanding what they are, what they do, and how to utilize them as you're building your lineups. Like you mentioned, the different ways to tell which ones are cash games, which ones are GPPs. And then based off that, that's how you determine all of your values for each player. And that's all based off salary. You find a person who has X amount of value, and you find that they're the same. Say you and I are the same player, you're cheaper, and I'm more expensive, whatever it may be. You have similar values or similar projections. Obviously, you're going to take the guy that's cheaper because he's a better value. So using those to find your value is the way to go.
Yep. And like you mentioned with the Vegas odds and player props and defensive team rankings and stuff like that based on just overall defensive ability versus position defense, those are all factors we have in our Daily Fantasy Cafe projections that you can kind of customize yourself. That will let you kind of project what you think is most important for the player on top of his baseline projection. As far as value goes, like you were saying, having good projections is what's going to help you find value, because if you have great projections that are telling you, oh, this backup running back is going to have 67 yards compared to another site that really doesn't adjust for injuries and stuff like that, you're going to be able to find those value guys a little bit easier. And the big thing about value is taking the projected points per dollar is the easiest way to sort out value. We apply that a little bit more extensively at Daily Fantasy Cafe with our cafe value, because it takes into consideration the different roster setups of the site you're playing on. So it adds that extra wrinkle to it of how much your player is actually worth at that given site based on the roster setup, his salary, the total salary cap you get to choose from on that site, everything like that. And finding the guys that provide the best value or cafe value is basically the name of the game in winning at least cash games. as far as GPPs go, like we said, you're trying to find those big outlier performances in order to win GPPs. And so the points per dollar matter a little less, where you're looking more towards like what a guy's ceiling per dollar is, rather than just his baseline projection for that week.
Yeah, and that makes sense. So a couple different strategies here we talked about. So give you a good idea of what you're looking for, cash games, GPPs, things like that. So utilize the tools that we have here. Utilize this information. Hopefully we can help you gain an edge. And we'll check you, or we'll find you guys out next time. God damn it, I can't talk. I'm going to cut the end of it.
All right.
Whatever.